back with Ultimate General Civil War, and this is the Confederate Panda Kraut Major General Let's Play. We've built the army back up after Stay Alert. Well, not back up, but up. And we're ready, finger quotes, for not Newport News, Shiloh. I'm going to say right now that I'm not convinced that this is a great army. This is the best army I can build. Reasonably, I'm hesitant to buy a lot of new weapons. I'm hesitant to push units much beyond the capacity of their officers. There's absolutely the instance of these units where maybe I'm using someone below their grade. I'm doing the best I can to build a useful officer corps. There's no doubt in my mind that 1st Division is my premier troop unit, but we'll take a look at the force before we jump in, and then obviously I will drop off the mic and record. But we have 1st Division under the command of Daryl Siegfried, one of the guys who's with us at the Potomac Fort. 1st Rifles, a new old unit reconstituted as a shooting perk unit. 2nd line is the mobility, maneuver proficiency, get up in their grill unit. This is another one I'm debating deleting and starting over again because I don't know. We'll see. I want to give it another battle or two before I really make the call. It's certainly a shame to try and restart, but this is not, again, I want to be clear, this is not a playthrough that's focused on hyper ultimate effective play. This is me discovering the mod, and this is definitely it requires a different methodology of playing. So there's that too. Oh, wait, we've already discovered this. How can I go? Well, it might be too high, but it doesn't drop it before there. That's the breakpoint. Okay, sure. Let's make it big. All right, so we've taken a look at these units. You know them. You've seen them before. 4th Rifles is built in the same spot, or the same... Well, actually, no, you've seen everything up until the first 2 divisions, basically. So the horse artillery, I've moved them down. I've side graded them, I guess, to 12-pound howitzers, and this is predominantly because they're incredible smoothbore guns. He excels at close range supports right there in the name. They're still classed as a light gun, so the same thing as the 6-pounders. They're actually slightly more efficient in that canister range, and then we'll start trying to level up more artillery units. We've got 3rd Ordnance, which is my counter battery. Well, yeah, it's a counter battery unit with 10 pairs, as big as it gets. And then somewhere around here I've got the Blakely, which I think is a filler for the it's the replacement for the Tredegar. Both of these have gone for the long range support, and when I get more of these guns I'll build these units up, but they're as big as I have is in terms of the actual guns I've got. Those 6-pounders I do have were put into a new artillery unit. I'm unfortunately just barely shy of picking up a perk, and then I dumped as many 10 3-inch ordnance guns as I could into a battery before I tripped off Major Bristow's unit too large for the officer, problem. We've got 3 units of cav. 1st Cav has been running around beating things up in melee. We've got 2nd Dragoon with, I guess that's it. Well, then if that's the case, whoa, yeah, never mind. That's huge. And it's not the stats that I'm that worried about. It's the efficiency penalty drop-off. I know I've deliberately pushed him down in rank to try and level some of these officers up and grow internally the officer corps. That is a whole new sub-game that I didn't have to mess with too much in the vanilla game that I actually find interesting. Like, there's an interesting kind of game. I do find it frustrating. I'm not going to pretend that it's like, oh, super all sunshine and rainbows. It's definitely frustrating to be kind of like, I just need some damn generals. But I mean, actually, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to mess with. We've got 3rd Dragoon. It's a new unit. They're using the Cook and Brother. I took a look at the damage curve for the Cook and Brother, and while the range is really variable, so from 2 to damn near 6, and the effective range is pretty short, so 300 versus 400 for an infantry musket. So they're going to have to get in to the shit to do their job. It's not like 2nd Dragoon is much different. They've also got the same kind of variability. That's interesting. It's a much smaller damage curve. But the Cook and Brother actually has fantastic stats, like surprisingly good stats. However, I'm worried about that die roll being so wide between 2 and 6 point, or between 2 and 5.2. Anyway, we'll see. I mean, I just need numbers to do some skirmishing stuff. This is the block of infantry. 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th rifles are all built in the same model, basically, as 1st Division. So they're all of them are accuracy perk. And then I've got whatever good muskets I could afford to stick in there. 3rd Division's relatively new. Still a rifled unit. This is one of the bigger colonels I had, and I was able to spin up a new unit with an accuracy perk, and I bought the MJs with rep, and so they're good for that. We have 4 militia units. These were unperked. That's why I have them classed as militia. And they're using basically all the smoothbore weapons I have, so they're essentially just supposed to be meat to fill out the units. And then they, by the virtue of me having the full kernels and everything, I was able to make them a bit bigger. And again, I just didn't want to use weapons I already had. Or didn't want to buy new weapons, so I was focusing on using guns I already had in inventory for the purposes of preserving money and everything else. So we bought out we've used most of our inventory, and it's not one of those things where I can stockpile weapons going forward. So it is what it is. And let me take a look. I bought all the guns I want to buy. 20 pounder, 24 pounder. Yeah, so we're going to be able to form a 24-pound howitzer unit pretty shortly in the next window, and then after the Shiloh's over, and then depending on how many parrots we end up getting, the same general thought process. That's the force. We've got 3 light infantry units. All of them, I'm making use of the fact that I can give them infantry rifles. So some of these units, I have an infantry rifle, but not in enough number to justify giving it to an infantry unit. But some of these infantry rifles actually have surprisingly good, sharpshooter applications. Now, they're not going to be something I'd want to be using for a sniper unit, but none of these units are A, classed as sniper tier yet, or B, leveled high enough for that to matter. So I'm going to be using these guys to just kind of hang around the edges and try and pick at artillery, do some scouting work and that kind of thing. So I don't want to be giving them hyper expensive Whitworths or what's this? The Enfield, right? Where is it? Yeah, this guy. These are expensive. I don't want to give them those guns. I want to be giving them guns I can kind of afford to put in units who I expect to have a degree of churn. So without further ado, let's take a look at the message traffic. Blah, 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 whatever. Thousands of the most modern rifles. Fantastic crap. And then several core of central states. What does this die roll mean? I don't know what that means. I'm assuming that just means like they're 1-star, or they're okay, but they're not like crack troops or whatever. I don't know. Minus 10% weapons quality, minus 5% size. So this is 30 to 35%. I guess with the debuff here, it looks more like 20 to 25%. Thank goodness I'm not seeing like high tier rifled weapons or whatever. But yeah. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into it and let's take a look at what we have to see. Oh, shit. I made one more unit than I actually needed to. Interesting. Well, let's go delete something. Crap. I actually kind of like everything I've got. I mean, I bitch about the officers, but this is an okay army. You're probably what I can afford to lose most. The 3-inch ordnance just does not excite me. It has continued to just prove like I look at the numbers and it just looks very unimpressive. Clicking on buttons is a thing you do in games. I don't know why I'm finding it so hard. So, yeah. Yeah. It's just really inaccurate. Yep, this is the thing I can afford to lose. Deuces. All right, so now I know for sure what I'm getting. Now, do I want to bump up? Do I want to bump you to a major and then see if I can't bump your numbers, I don't know, 100? That wouldn't be a bad idea. Nope, almost immediately you still suffer the penalty of being too large. Well, in that case, I should level that captain up so that the captain can do something useful. Same problem for you. Yeah, whatever. We just have a major in reserve. It's no big deal. Okay, let's take a look at the numbers and see how totally fucked we are. 43 some odd thousand versus 70,000. Although, again, with the possibility of variability for frankly both of us, who knows? Who knows what that ends up meaning? I mean, I get a bunch of allied troops over here, and just who knows, right? Same deal here. So yeah, let's take a look. I'm gonna turn the mic off here, and I'm gonna jump into it. But until I come back, this is Fiasco. I'll see you in a sec. Okay, and we're back. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that we jumped from Bull Run all the way to Shiloh. So that wasn't intentional. And I'll intersperse some of the commentary about that as we go through here. So this is Shiloh. And what I do is I load in, to begin with, I lead with the things that I think are going to struggle to catch up with the army. So that's a couple of skirmishers to make sure that we don't get kind of caught blindsided, all of the militia, and then some of the artillery units that aren't like the horse artillery unit or the other 12-pounder units, or the 6-pounder units, because they're all classed as being light. So we'll jump in with the slow, finger quotes here, units, or the ones that I'm worried about running out of stamina. That's really the big concern, is actually not really anything to do with them being slow. As far as I can tell, there's not actually a change to the speed. My concern is the fact that these units might be tired when they finally get to the river, basically, where I'm going to try and push a crossing. Meanwhile, my veteran troops have their stamina stat leveled up, and I can kind of march them to catch up. So initially what's going to happen here is I'm going to be sending forward as wide a screen as possible of the militia and the skirmishers to try and, catch whatever skirmishers or patrol pickets that the Union has south of their position. Ultimately, I'm going to try and force a crossing on the right edge of the map and then advance across the river into this block of woods north of the Union position on the river that sort of works as a really great little bunker and kind of hook left from there. Ultimately, we do accomplish that, but I achieve more success than I initially suspect or expect that I would on the left as well, and that ends up being kind of what we do, is we do the initial plan, but then we also accomplish a push on the left and end up enveloping Union forces. So that's what you're going to see on the screen now. So I finished recording the audio for Bull Run. I had played up until this point, up until Shiloh, at that juncture, and it's not uncommon for me to merge, to play half of a battle, save, go to bed or whatever because I've got work the next day, or because I got to go out with friends, or it's dinner time, or any number of reasons. It's not uncommon for me to record, merge, and then kind of keep the whole thing processed together as one video. So I upload Bull Run, and I go through and I look at the dates on the videos, and I'm like, okay, these all look like the ones that fed into Bull Run, so I delete them without checking what the video content was. So let this be a lesson to me, who works in information technology and database analysis, who should know better, is basically what I'm getting at. Verify your data before you do anything to it. So we had Ambush, Convoy, and Stay Alert. They're both really fun in the rebalance mod. I mean, they're fun in the base game. I still say that Ambush Convoy is one of my favorite battles because it just feeds into, I think, the narrative of what the Confederate campaign should feel like, where you're just sort of in this race against time, where your logistics are never going to be enough, and you don't have enough bullets, and you don't have enough this, you don't have enough that. Like, it's to feed into that kind of flow or feel of what the campaign, finger quotes here, should feel like. I think Ambush Convoy really nails it. And then similarly so, Stay Alert. So Ambush Convoy in the rebalance mod played basically the same as it does on the vanilla game. You send your new units, so after Bull Run you've got your 4 or 5 in the rebel units, and then all of a sudden you need to grow to 10. And I'm surprised that they didn't increase the number of units in Stay Alert or Ambush Convoy, because everything else has been bumped up 1 or 2 units from wherever it would have been in the vanilla game, and yet in Ambush Convoy and Stay Alert we're stuck to the original 10. So I build 11 for both of these missions and try and see my luck. The weird bug, you can call it that, for reinforcements in Ambush Convoy still work, or not, in Stay Alert still worked. So I got 11 units in that battle, so that does work, confirmed to rework, to work. So what is now my 2nd division basically got built in that battle, along with 1 or 2 of the cav units. I think just one of the light infantry units, and then a second and third artillery unit. And that's what I kind of worked on leveling up. So you had the 10-pound Parrot unit and the Tredegar unit had both gained some experience, and that's where they got that experience. So Ambush Convoy, you stack your elite troops to the north and you stack your militia in the middle. You weight the north pretty heavily with artillery and everything else, and then I actually had a unit of skirmishers stand back there as well to trigger the AI's routing behavior to push them into the top right corner of the map. I had my veteran troops that basically caught the units as they were spawning in off the north edge. We routed them and then pushed them into the corner. There were, I think, 5 units, as well as the artillery, dedicated to that task, and 1 unit of skirmishers. Once that had happened, the units got pushed into the corner, and then we just sort of, followed them off and then, wiped them out. While all of this was happening, my militia and cav, and the 2 units of cav that spawned on the map, had captured the supply wagon and then pulled back and hidden it. I turned their supply off so I could maximize the money I was pulling out of the Union supply wagon. And then the AI troops in the rebalance mod were very aggressive. That was a really, really fun, cool change to the way that the battle plays. They were very aggressive, and once we'd sent their northernmost reinforcements off into the corner, I moved the militia into that cornfield just south of the weird little U shape where you intercept the northern forces, and posted up there and sent a couple of the units that had been part of the initial northernmost intercepting force to join them. But they didn't get there in time. So the Union reinforcements that come in off of the right edge of the map zerged to the center of the field, and then pretty aggressively continued to charge north, because I didn't have enough troops, and the AI was able to calculate, like, hey, we have a pretty good chance of making this work. And they did. They really did. So I had to continue. It was very touch and go for a while there. And then once the northern reinforcements had been penned up in the corner, I left 1st, 2nd, and 3rd infantry up there just banging away on them because of the most accurate units. Relocated all of the artillery and the skirmishers and the the artillery all south to try and stem the tide of this very aggressive Union push north, because they were threatening to bisect my command. And on one side would have been some artillery and the supply wagons and some cavalry, and on the other side would have been tired, beaten, morale-shocked infantry because of all the melee. It was very exciting. It was very touch and go. I'm very sorry I lost the recording, because that would have been an excellent episode to show some of the changes in terms of the way that battle plays, because I think in the vanilla game we all know that they're pretty passive, the AI is in that fight, and it's just kind of, oh, here they are, okay, whatever. So it's a shame. It sucks. That is what it is. It was very fun, really, really a lot of fun, and I think that one of the things that the rebalance mod does very well is the pace of the game just feels and flows differently, and I don't know. I was engaged in that battle in a way that I'm typically not. So we're back to the Shiloh really quick. So overall, very high opinion of the Confederate version mission, Steel Convoy or Ambush Convoy, and the rebalance mod. It was very touch and go for a long time there, and I had a great time. Again, apologies for losing the recording. Back to Shiloh. So our troops have massed on the southern side of this river, whatever it is historically called, and we're beginning to push because I realized that there was no one in this block of trees that the 2 militia units and the artillery are pushing up into now. And I wanted to get right up on this big-ass unit of artillery. It's 500 men, so it's got to be 20 guns, give or take. It's big. Whatever it is, it's big, and seriously, like, taking them out is the biggest hurdle about this mission from the Confederate perspective. They've got 1 unit of guns at this point. They end up getting 2 more, and as usual, the artillery is the big killer. So I've got basically every gun that I can. I'm edging it up as close as I can to get it into ideally canister, but barring that, shell range, and at least trying to morale shock their battery, if not rout it. It's messy, but the casualties are borne largely by the militia, so that's kind of what they're here for, is the units are big and they're rookies and they have shit guns and they're cheap. They were explicitly brought in to absorb losses, and they're doing that job well. I've got my 2 counter battery units, the Tredigers and the 10-pound Parrots, blasting away at their battery as well, and we're it's moving slowly, but the mission is accomplished. I mean, we've already knocked off 115 men out of the unit, and it's just going to keep on kind of getting worn down. Pretty quickly, they're going to start flashing white, and then because our rate of casualty out is so low, they're actually just going to stand there and take it for a while, which works out really well. It sucks, obviously, for that militia unit in the front there, eating canister point blank, but A, that's what they're here for, and B, nobody else is taking that canister. So I would prefer, obviously, if I wasn't taking canister, they were getting shot in some other manner. But the messing, the crossing is a bit messy, but ultimately it's very successful. So the Confederate portion of this battle is going pretty well. My big objectives here are preserve my veteran troops as much as possible, level up the accuracy as much as possible, and don't trigger the flag. I want the full 2 hours here to inflict Union casualties, weaken units, and everything else. And I think I don't trip the flag here, but I think maybe I do later on, because we come back to this portion of the fight. We break off to the right really quick and then come back and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, Shiloh is actually usually a slog, and this video has been sped up 225% to account for that fact. It was a 3-hour game session. I actually recorded the whole thing in one sitting. And as much as that was long, I had fun. I really had fun. This battle was really great. Like, it was a slog, and it was a meat grinder, and it was difficult and all that kind of thing. The The Army of Northern Virginia coming out of Shiloh, and we'll get to that at the end of the battle. I'll talk about it some. I did a post recording the day of, so you can get my fresh thoughts. The Army of Northern Virginia coming out of the battle is looking really good. It looks really good. So I usually you can get kind of mauled pretty healthily in this fight if you're not careful, and I think that there was a good mix of aggression and the use of fires and shock to keep the Union on their toes. And once that momentum started to shift in our favor, it was very hard for the Union AI to recapture it. We also got some very lucky envelopments in the mission. Not lucky, but good envelopments in the mission that allowed us to like segment off, and destroy entire segments of the Union line. Versus, I think the worst thing that can happen for the Confederates, and the thing that you need to accomplish as a Union general in this battle, is a ordered retreat, where when it comes time to take Pittsburgh Landing, the Union Army has all of its troops present. Now they might be battered, beaten up, half strength, whatever, but every brigade is present. That is the worst possible outcome for the Confederates, and I think it is the thing you have to do as a Union commander, is preserve your command. So I'm backing off the flag because I don't want them to capture it. I don't want myself to capture it. I do want them to keep trying to make sure that we don't capture it. I think I do trip it at some juncture and just back off, and they swarm forward, and all of my artillery that's currently present over there starts blasting like crazy. It ends up going really well. So we've effectively crossed the river at this juncture. And it's not too long now before they end up shifting us over to the other side of the battle. And I don't like the other half of the battle because they're not my dudes, so I don't really care. But obviously you have to because it's Shiloh. Okay, so enough about Shiloh for the time being. Let's talk about Stay Alert. So Stay Alert, same issue. You've got 10 units, but I built 11, and you end up being able to bring the 11th. It's a battle where it's like the beginning portion of it, especially in the rebalance mod, when that variability kicks in. The AI got a lucky roll. They got, I think they doubled 3 units of their cavalry, so there was just this massive cavalry swarm. Yeah, so I trip the flag, retreat, try and get them to come take it. Eventually, I think they do, but not before the timer runs out and we switch over to the next side, but we'll see. Anyway, so there's a metric shitload of Union Cav, and the thing is you can't detach skirmishers in this game, right? So in this version of the game. So I'm over here like, well, shit, how do I cover all of the front that I have to cover? Use a huge map now that you can't just stick skirmishers in the fences and be like, all right, this is good enough. Hold for now. So it's really touch and go. Oh my goodness, it was intense. The lead up to Shiloh went from being these 2 missions that you kind of can play on autopilot in the vanilla game, if you're smart about it, to incredible missions. Like the entire time I was sitting here, I thank goodness the pace has slowed down because I could keep up with the decisions I had to make. There's an incredibly aggressive Union AI in Stay Alert. They use their cavalry very intelligently. They're coming in, shooting and dipping back out. Like my units are constantly on the verge of like, they're turning because they don't know who to shoot at, and they're tired because they keep on like having to, cover gaps in my line. Oh, it was really, really a fun mission, and I feel bad that I don't have the recording. But all of that back and forth, and the exhaustion, and the oh god, what's going on, and everything else, the pace, the tension, the mission was exciting, very fun. There are fewer moments in this game that were more satisfying than when my reinforcements arrived. Remember like in Lord of the Return of the King, right? Or Two Towers, when things don't look great for the Fellowship, and then all of a sudden Gandalf shows up on the edge of that hill and the cavalry comes streaming down the side of a mountain. Or alternatively, take your pick, when the Rohirrim arrive at the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Oh my god, it was just like that. They've got all these cav units running around, and then all of a sudden the second division of the Confederacy arrives, and it's a melee cav unit, and it's I think a skirmish cav unit maybe, but it's light infantry, and it's 2 brigades of infantry, and there's skirmish. Oh man, it was so fun. I'm sitting here and I'm bouncing with excitement when the thing finally happens. I'm like, oh, we're coming for you now. We get a couple of really aggressive charges off, and melee cavalry is worth its weight in gold. And I keep on saying that cavalry is really good in melee. I think one of the things that they've done is they've made it so that if you want to be really good at melee combat, you got a perk for it. And that's one of the play notes that I really found very useful is my cavalry unit, the cuirassiers. They bullied that battlefield like you wouldn't believe. I think they've if you can claim battle honors or whatever, they've got notched into the banner of that regiment or brigade or whatever. They've got like 3 different Union cav units, signets that they would have put in their battle honors. They reaped a toll. And the skirmishers did great work. The infantry were able to just evaporate their skirmisher swarm. And then really quickly, once the momentum turned on the Confederates, for the Union in that fight, once we were able to wrap up their cav swarm that was threatening the underbelly of my position, we were quickly able to shift the flow of the battle completely. And just wrap them up. We in both battles, in Stay Alert and Ambush Convoy, we destroyed the entire Union force. Casualties were basically non-existent in Ambush Convoy. I think I lost like 300. It was pretty good. But Stay Alert was much tougher. Casualties were somewhere in the vicinity of like 2,000. Although again, complete and total destruction of the Union force, so I'll take it. And then here we come back to Shiloh. In the prelude to the video here, I talked about how I expanded the army after Stay Alert, and that was essentially using all of the captured muskets we had to stand up these militia units. Any spare colonels were used to try and spin up new infantry units who have the accuracy perk. And I just created a bunch of artillery units because I'm seeing how powerful artillery is, and I want to develop a strong artillery corps for the Army of Northern Virginia. So here we are back at Shiloh. Well, really quickly, again, I am deeply sorry for losing the videos. That's it's a fumble on my part. But we drive on, and I didn't have the willpower to re-record those videos because I'd spent all this time already recording Shiloh. And like I said, Shiloh was 3.5 hours. It was basically like the entire play session I had booked aside for a Saturday, fighting out this battle and trying to keep on it. So I wasn't going to replay them. I can talk about how they went. In terms of feedback or whatever, I'm continuing to try and see if I can't make melee a thing. Because especially in this battle, the AI gives you a lot of these units that have the melee perk, the speed perk, and the charge, and they've all got Springfield 42s. Just the entirety of 2 Corps, more or less, has Springfield 42s. So there's not really a lot of reason for me to lean on these units as shooters. But as it stands, I keep running into that. Let's look at the return on investment. What's the golden mean of the utilization of force here? So a unit perked for accuracy can stand still and deliver its most efficient damage, standing still in cover, supported by close range artillery and allied units. Okay, so all that sounds really good. There's a lot of points moving into the favor of accuracy. Good muskets are expensive. All right, there's that. And the damage dealt is not shattering, I would say. So a successful melee charge is typically shattering. It typically destabilizes an entire portion of the enemy's line. It typically typically will inflict upwards of, I would say, 30% casualties in a successful charge before the unit's successfully able to rout and break contact. So all of those things are, I think, very favorable in the favor of a melee unit. Is if you're able to land a charge, support it properly, and everything else, you can inflict devastating casualties. However, in order to do so, you burn a lot of stamina, condition. You expose your units to do so. Typically, they are no longer supported. It is difficult to support a charge with close-range artillery like it would be an aggressive defense. And the rate of casualties is typically higher in a melee unit than it is a shooting unit. I think there is a place for both. But all of the offensive applications of a melee unit, a melee infantry unit, I think can be accomplished with melee cavalry. I'm not sure yet. I'm still figuring that out. Units not perked for melee can function in that role, although obviously they're not going to be good at it in the same ways. And I still think there's a use for the perks that make your units faster when paired with the perks that give you accuracy. However, the more that I play, lessons learned here, the more that I play, the more I think of those first two perks, accuracy has to be the choice every time, because with the accuracy perk, you can level that unit to the point of getting a second perk, predominantly via shooting, and they're going to be effective in the role. While you're doing that, you can be leveling their stamina and leveling their firearms and leveling their morale. And if they get themselves involved in the occasional melee, leveling their melee. The middle tier offers a great deal of interesting choice for infantry development. There's the second accuracy perk, the obvious choice if you want to go for a pure Fusilier unit. At that point, really all they can do, they've really specialized hyper deeply or hyper extensively down the path of I'm a shooter. Okay, that's fine. In that instance, that's all they do. I think that there is a place for a unit that is perk. The first perk is in the accuracy perk, but the middle perks, there's one that involves speed and I think rotation. And that paired with the accuracy from the first tier could be very good. I forget entirely what the third tier is, so I don't remember how I would do that. But I what I'm trying to say is I feel like exclusively accuracy tier all the way through for all my infantry would be a mistake because the AI is gonna charge. It's just gonna happen. And so you need to be prepared in the Rebal Lens mod for, I think, the inevitability that some melee combat will occur, and no other unit in the army can develop into that role and, more importantly, have the numbers to perform it with the same level of competency or economics of force like infantry can. Even melee cavalry, who is the master at the role, is expensive to put in that role. Artillery can deliver fires, and they can shut down enemy morale. Accurate infantry can do the same. You can do that, but there's going to be a number of times, I think, in the campaign where it's going to be inefficient to shoot someone out of cover versus a dedicated unit charging in. But accuracy is so important. Basic, fundamental, ranged accuracy is so fundamentally important to the minimum function of an infantry brigade in this game that I think the first perk has to be an accuracy, just so that you can be qualified as you can be classified as a barely competent infantry unit. Now, we can talk about specializations later on and everything else. What gun you choose, I think, makes a significant difference in how they play, because there's the Springfield 55, the Springfield line down to the Harper's Ferry and everything else. They have a little bit worse drop-off, I've noticed, at the longer ranges, but they have a higher rate of fire. I think there's definitely a place for that kind of a gun in your front line. In fact, I would say that that's probably preferable as a gun for your front line. Then there are guns like the Lorenz, and I think the Harper's, or the Enfield, that have a slower rate of fire but better accuracy. So for reference, the Springfield line of rifles is fire rate 125. I think that's a pretty high ROF. It's pretty good, especially with units as their efficiency goes up. They reload faster, shoot better. They take less time to get themselves situated to fire off a volley, etc., so forth and so on. But again, those muskets drop off in accuracy to like 20% at the extreme outside of their range. They're good in mid-range. They're fine mid-range guns, but they lose a lot at the extremes. Meanwhile, a gun like the Lorenz is still 40% accurate at its longest range. So that's a good long-range weapon, but their fire rate's like 75 or 100. Now, I don't know what the direct translation is between 125 and 100 or 75. I don't know. I don't. But I do know it's there. That one number, bigger numbers are generally better in most of these games. So it's a thing. It's a thought to have, is that if you're going to go for the full accuracy perk all the way down that right side of the tree, probably take a look at a gun that plays into that. So look at the 100 or the 75 fire rate rifles, because those tend to have a more generous drop-off at their extreme long ranges. A weapon you intend to use up close and personal like, I'm thinking you want one that's going to have a higher ROF so that you can theoretically lean into the possibility of morale shocking the unit so that their return fires are ineffective. Or you can stem the tide and bloody the nose of a unit that's going to try and charge. And in those instances, high rate of fire is probably better than not like firing more often and hitting, 20% versus 40% of the extreme long ranges. You probably get 3 volleys in versus 2, or something like that. That's going to make enough of a difference to theoretically morale shock a unit. So there's these simple things you're doing besides the perks, but take a look at the equipment and everything else that I think makes a big deal in how these units play. It's pretty cool. It's really cool. I like what they've done. I really do think it's very fun. So let's talk about Shiloh a bit, since I've just been going off about guns the entire time. So like I said, we were successfully able to pincher the Union force, and I realized that if I continue to extend my right flank aggressively, I might be able to pen them in. And then if I push them into that area by the river, north and west of my current position, that's swampland, and they have terrible cover in swampland, and they can't move very quickly. All of these things, and we're firing downhill, and there's a lot of different factors that make that very attractive to me to try and move my troops into that position and then push them down. Now we're still in a kind of experimental phase of the game where I'm trying to figure out like what works and what doesn't, and I get to the point where not right now, but later, I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to kill these guys, and I think about charging because maybe they'll surrender, and that goes terribly. And you'll see. We'll get to that later, but that goes terribly, and we'll talk about it when the time comes. Anywho, so yeah, we continue to extend our flanks. We continue to try and shoot off whole units. We're starting to see some of the smaller things like artillery batteries and small units of skirmishers begin to shatter. But they're just routing into a circle, and they've got really nowhere to go at this point. It's not even so much an issue, I think, in this particular spot of terrain of like, when they're routing across a river, sometimes they get stuck there, and the AI is just kind of like, shit, I've got no clue what to do right now. I think this isn't that. This is this. It might happen at this like creek bed that they're trying to cross, but I think that it just they're so slow. Is what I think happens is they're just so slow in that swamp terrain that they can't escape as a direct result of the swampland, and that's my thesis. I'm not really sure. Anyway, let's take a look at what's going on over here on the right. So on the Confederate right, the Union is now trying to fall back towards the Hornet's Nest. If you're, well, I've seen Panic Kraut's video, for example. He's able to swoop around their the Union right, Confederate left, and force them over towards the river and kind of box them up over there, so they never even enter the Hornet's Nest. I'm not able to accomplish the same goal here, unfortunately. But we do, kind of have a knockdown drag out here. It's not. This is actually not a very fun or exciting portion of the battle, and it's predominantly because the troops associated with Second and Reserve Corps are not optimized for ranged work at all. They don't have the gun for it. Some of them do actually have the perk for it, but they don't have the experience. The stats are bad. Take your pick, right? There's just a number of reasons why this doesn't work out very well. Notably, the artillery detachment associated with Second and Reserve Corps is almost exclusively 12-pound howitzers, 6-pound field guns, and a handful of Napoleon units. And it's just... It doesn't lend itself well to long-range bombardment, basically, is what it boils down to. So all of those things combine, and I'm not really able to, effectively shell things. So I start trying to think about, what about a flank? What about a flank left and a flank right? What if I envelop it again? And that is also not terribly successful. Let's put it this way. We have a long grind ahead of us, right? So it's 4 hours and 12 minutes in game left on the mission clock, and I think we really come down to the wire before we make a dent on the Hornet's Nest. We just have to grind this out. I stay in my trenches, so to speak, in my forest, and I blast, and I just try and, tempt units into the attack. That's going to be advantageous for me and disadvantageous for the Union to initiate an attack. Part of the other thing is I'm waiting for the elements of the Reserve Corps to get online, and the hope is that I'll be able to utilize them as a right flank. And then what I might be able to do is battle drill 1 Alpha the Union position. So we've established here with Breckenridge's Second Corps a pretty solid fire base. This is our base of fire. And what I want to do is I want to put all of the Reserve Corps on the Confederate right wing, and then kind of like a Xerox almost is the way I've heard it described, is swipe left across the map from one side of the ridge or field across the position, while my troops from the Second Corps advance north, and we just kind of grind. The dream is to just kind of grind the enemy down. It doesn't work out. These brigades of theirs are huge, and mine are not all that big, and they're still tired. And I'm still trying to figure out how to approach them, how to get over there. So I keep on thinking, if I can get a spoiler unit of troops and get around their flank, maybe we can get them to expose their sides to artillery fire or combined musketry or something. How do I do this, right? Basically is the thought process is how do I make this work? So I'm able to ferret a couple of these units here on the Union left, Confederate left. Excuse me. Around the Confederate left, and I'm thinking like, oh, okay, this will be good, because what might be able to happen here is I'm able to push them out, and then there's this like strip of trees to the left of the hornet's nest, and I kind of want to get maybe like a division, if I could pull that off, a division online over there, and that would be great. And maybe an artillery unit. And then so we would have 3 of the 4 sides of the Union position boxed. And then we would just be shooting it from, musketry from the one side, cannon from the other, so forth and so on. And it ultimately kind of fails, probably because I don't support the attack enough. So I've got the 1 brigade there that just got charged out. I have these 2 tiny brigades that were one of the ones that split, and an artillery unit over there. And now I don't have enough troops to support that push anymore. So now we're outnumbered. We've got artillery, but the thing is that once they get it into their head that, yo, dog, you should charge, they do. And the issue is that I'm dealing with is my left flank is now threatened by that brigade that charged me. Can't read the name. It starts with an L. Lariman, maybe? I don't know. Whoever. The guy on the left. The one that is directly threatening my left flank. Him. That guy. That unit. Whatever. I can't ignore them. That's just shy of 3,000 dudes right up on my butt. I can't ignore it. I have to deal with it. So now whatever offensive push I might try and make is it's just off the table. And unfortunately, extracting those troops I've got is also a difficulty that I'm not really sure how I would do it. And we have this frustrating situation where I have a dearth of troops on the Confederate left over by the river. I have too many at the moment, and so 1 or 2 of them could come over and support and relieve this whole thing, and our press on the Hornet's Nest would go much better. And so I'm over here I wish I could support, but I can't. So yeah, this all goes terribly. Let's just say that this everything about this goes horrible. There's the when I say this, I mean the attempt to outflank to the left the Union position just goes bad. Assuming the map is north, south, east, west, the attempt to outflank from the west, moving east, of the Union position goes bad. I'm just trying to utilize the artillery to shell them into submission, and that doesn't really work. But we do manage to inflict a lot of losses. So we in a lot of cases, I think, give worse than we get. I'm trying to wipe out this 1 unit so I can just not have to worry about a thing in my flank. But the overwhelming amount of force they have over there is such that I just can't. I can't counter it. For as good as my cover is and the fact that I have artillery support, it's just not enough. We don't have enough guns and enough anything else, and the artillery's, only able to fire so quickly and everything else. They come screaming in, which is really terrifying. Fortunately, they get canistered and then shelled and everything else, and they back off. But this is giving you an indication. My left is just totally exposed, and I've got, I've got to kick them out, but I'm not sure how to do it. So, in fairness, they take a real thrashing trying to get me out of there. So that part works out great. for me. But from the perspective of trying to coordinate the manner in which I'm going to attack the hornet's nest, it's just bad. It's not bad. It's derailed. Because I lose an artillery unit, an AI one, and 2 infantry brigades get mauled, but they're alive, so there's that. And now I've got 2 Confederate units, 2 Union units on my left who will eventually recover morale that need to be dealt with. And I don't have a lot of troops over here to deal with them. And they're tired, those ones that I do have. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, shit, I've got 3 hours. They're pretty spread out. They've got 2 brigades down here, 1 brigade up north chasing my other unit. So theoretically, that spreading out of units might be enough to do something. I don't know. I'm leaning on the cannon to crush some of these units. I'm letting my units rest up. I'm trying to get my guys in cover. I'm trying to figure out some way to remove these 2 Union units on my left from the equation, because my right's secure now. My right is secure. Those units are resting. They're rested, actually. And so I'm over here like, okay, we got to do something. We got 2 hours, and I'm not actually sure. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you don't take the hornet's nest here, you lose. That's the thought process in my mind, is if you don't take the hornet's nest, that's it. So I'm over here a little frustrated because these AI units are kind of only barely up to the task. But I'm thinking like, well, your right's secure, and you can probably just hold against the Union forces. So you've got to go for it, because you got 2 hours left. And whether I'm right or wrong as to whether or not the failing to take the flag constitutes defeat here, that's the decision. That's the thought process that I have going into the decision, is I think, perhaps inaccurately, that if I fail to take this flag, I lose. And so that guides my decision-making process. And that decision is, okay, so we don't have rifles. We don't have units perked for accuracy. We don't have long-range artillery. And we don't have a flanking force on the Union left. Right? No, Union right. What do we have? We have large blocks of troops. Those troops have rapid firing, smoothbore muskets, and we have a lot of close range artillery. So we need to get up in the grill of these units and start shooting them at very close range. Start making use of our rate of fire. Start morale shocking or routing or possibly even shattering Union units. And then I just now see for the first time at this time that they've got 1 artillery brigade that's 745 dudes big. I don't even know how many guns that is because I've never seen a battery that large. But that rapidly shows me that this is not a battle we're going to win at range. I need to get up in there. And meanwhile, the skirmish on the left is going okay. It's fine. So I aggressively advance up into close range. The thought process being that muskets are not accurate at very far away, but if I can get right on the ass of these artillery units, I can hopefully deliver some punishing volleys and get them to leave me alone. Or at the very least prevent them from delivering accurate fires while I advance and while I get my artillery online. Because this attack is actually pretty well supported. The equipment probably isn't super modern. It's not very accurate. So I'm dealing with, finger quotes here, lesser stuff. But we have a lot of units. We have I think, good close range support. And I have a spare general I can put up there with a pretty big morale aura. And so that this actually goes okay. And I am pleasantly surprised at how well this actually goes. So we managed to sort of envelop the Union position in the Hornet's Nest with the troops that I had ultimately earmarked as like second wave. So typically when I go into these kind of attacks, I tend to do it in division double line, where I'll have the dream is 3 and 3, but I'm pretty sure most divisions I build are 5 infantry brigades, so it's 3 up front and then 2 in the rear. And then if anybody decides to rout or fall back or whatever, or someone's not looking solid or something, I advance one of the 2 and then give them a chance to breathe and all that kind of thing. Or if need be, I flank. Well, I see the opportunity here, and I've got this big-ass unit of infantry, 3,071 guys, and they're not doing anything. And I'm thinking, what if I start, circling these guys around? What if I start getting the Confederate artillery, who the guns aren't as new, but there are more batteries of them, right up on the Union position and start shelling these guys at very close range? What would that accomplish? And the answer is it would accomplish a lot. It would be very effective. So we do that, basically. We just sort of have to rely on weight of fire instead of quality of fire. And as, I forget who the person that said this is. I think it's frequently attributed to Joseph Stalin. I don't know if that's a truly accurate representation of who said this line or not, but quantity has a quality all its own is, I think, not an inaccurate assessment about this stuff, because I'm using guns that are not, the best of the best, but they're good enough. And I'm using infantry that don't have equipment that is very good, and I'm using infantry that has not been perked in a manner that I would call the most efficient, but it's good enough. And what was the mantra of my Union Major General campaign? What's the hill that I plant my standard in as like the hallmark of any fiasco video or any fiasco playthrough of this game? Or, I frequently say that good enough often is. And it's something I take from my professional life, or when we're doing, software development or anything else, is you can deliver a product on time that meets the needs of meets the needs of the client, or the customer, or the user, or whatever else. And there may be features you'd like to improve, there may be some polished passes you'd like to go through, but as long as everything works, as long as all the requirements have been met, that product is good enough. It's good enough for release. It's not good enough for the finalized product. There's always room to improve. There's always room to do better. There's always room to go back after the fact and do either a firming up pass-through sprint, where the thought process is, hey, this is a product that's live. Let's take some of the feedback and see what we can't do to make it better, more efficient, faster, have lighter system draw, have, 1 or 2 fewer queries so it gets run faster or something. Take your pick as far as, kind of how all that shit shakes out. But the idea is that these troops are up to this task. There are better troops who might do it better, but they're not here. And there are better cannons. But in this close range work, in canister range, it doesn't really matter too much whether or not you're using the best of the best of the best. And I had a little bit lost sight of that, I think, when I was playing this battle. So in launching this attack, I'm reminded of my mantra. And it's been my previous experience that charging troops into the Hornet's Nest is typically a mistake, because there's a lot of melee defense there, and there's 2 brigades of infantry who are overlapping. And so typically that balance or that buff that I'm relying on to make offensive charges work, of 2 units charging 1, isn't present. So you need to shoot them until one of them routs, and then launch your dudes in, and then you can rely on that. And then now all of a sudden, unfortunately, you yourself can't occupy the hornet's nest, but you can physically walk your soldiers on top of it, and there is a great deal of cover to be had in that spot. So that works out really well. So, yeah, I mean, rate of fire, numbers, good support, good artillery support, everything else. You'll notice that I have the artillery wagon turned off because I don't want to drain it. And then now that they've been kicked out of the hornet's nest, I'm pretty sure we've turned on a timer, I would imagine. And we move up. I kind of continue to press the attack. One of the things that I got myself into trouble with all the damn time in the vanilla game is I would have the enemy on the back foot. For one reason or another, I felt as if the momentum was in my favor, and one of the differences between my play style and, say, someone like Something Compass is Something Compass would have the enemy on the back foot, and he would say, excellent, an opportunity for me to rest my troops, an opportunity for me to dig in, and an opportunity for me to move my artillery up closer. And that is the right answer. And very frequently, I just get, I don't know, I see red or something. I see the opportunity once the enemy's, not organized and routing and everything else. I'm like, great, an opportunity to take the momentum and keep and seize it and press forward and get even more kills. And that would get me higher casualties in the vanilla game. It would also get me frequently 100% kills. And the question is, like, at what cost? I don't know. So some of the things about the way the rebalance shakes out is that musketry isn't as effective. And that typically means that if the enemy isn't organized, one brigade by itself won't deliver effective musketry fire. And so an organized attacker can make use of that, I think, and keep the enemy's momentum and use it against them. This is a great charge. This works out really well. We charged this brigade of artillery. This was the one that was 700, and because they were so huge, 700, they shatter at like 250 left, which is crazy because usually artillery lasts until, there's 25 is typically when I see them break. So now we finally expand to the whole battle, and you get a picture of where the two largely independent until now forces have been. You see all of I Corps, or the Army of Northern Virginia, is arrayed around the Union defenders on the far left, and they're boxed up in a little corner. We've enveloped them. They're retreating southward because the weight of forces is heavier in the north, and I've got just skirmishers kind of holding the door closed, so to speak, in the south. And that's not super ideal if they were to launch in a melee over there, so that wouldn't be great. And so I'm trying to think of, like, well, how do I, close the door on this murder ball? And do I need to move the cavalry in there? And so right up in here is about when I start thinking about what if I charged. It's a mistake. I do it, and that's why I know it's a mistake, but I do it. I start allocating a few of my troops to meet the retreaters from the Hornet's Nest, and I just should keep shooting them. It's much safer for my units, everything else. But the thought process in my head was, okay, the patch notes say that the melee stats of routing units has been significantly debuffed. And my experience in this battle does bear that out, is that we don't take anywhere near the kind of casualties that we normally would in a vanilla game. And I would never think about charging this force in vanilla, but at the same time, they would be dead already. But my other experience is that your troops are equally shit if they're exhausted. And launching into these attacks like this drains the stamina or condition of these brigades at light speed, at incredibly quick rates, and you have got to keep that in mind. And as soon as you can, break contact. What I would say to do different next time is limited or short charges. So melee is still usable. I think it's quite usable, but you need to have a very clear objective for what that charge is going to accomplish, and you need to do everything you can to preserve the condition of the unit before you launch the attack. And I just drain my units here, trying things out, experimenting, everything else, and it costs me. It cost me the units that we destroy here. We do destroy them, sure, but it's not effective. It's not efficient, and that's, I think, the problem. It could be, it could be efficient, and it's not. So, yeah, that's basically it. Is once your guys are exhausted, even if they're routing, it doesn't matter, basically. So yeah, I'm continuing to aggressively advance with my troops, and I'm attempting to get all of the units that have surrendered all kind of boxed together. I do want to capture as many of these units as possible, because you get a higher percentage of their weapons than you would if you just shot them. Now, I know you only get 1,000 recruits back from units that you've captured, so that's not a big motivating factor in trying to capture these units. It actually is the guns, but again, they're exhausted. I should be just, okay, that's it. You know, they're exhausted. That's all there is to it. Anyway, so, you know, all that goes fine, I guess. Eventually I do realize, hey, this isn't working, and I also realize that the 3 units I've got down there are all rifled units. So what I do is I push them back into the tree line. I think I end up taking the cannon away from there, but I'm like, okay, so how can we kind of keep the attack on this flag going? Again, the thought process for today is I A, don't want to go to tomorrow, and I B, want to take the flag in the last 20 minutes, because there's a couple levels of reinforcements they get here, and I want to get those too before I have the opportunity to. So I'm kind of being careful about how I press the offensive on the Union. I guess it's the Union right now. Like, there's elements of the Union that are been, you know, they're off to my left, but this is what's remaining, I guess, of their forces. Yeah, I'm kind of hesitantly pressing the attack there, because they're pretty well dug in this diamond shape of trees to the left of the flag, and so I kind of want to put, like, okay, let's put some fires in there and everything else. But additionally, part of it as well is, if I'm being honest, I know that there's going to be a wave of reinforcements that spawn on the northern edge of the map, right about where 2nd Cavalry currently is. I don't know the composition off the top of my head. I think after the fact I was aware, like, oh, okay, it's 3 infantry and an artillery and maybe a cav or something. I forget what it is, but anyway, I've got I've got these 3 infantry brigades to the south, waiting essentially to meet the 2 infantry units and just route them. And they're there predominantly with the thought process of, okay, these units are exhausted. They're not going to march fast anyway. And these 2 units of the Union are going to continue to rally again and again and again and again. They're going to rally. And I think the AI it must have a bonus to stamina regen or something. I don't know. Or they just maybe have just high stamina stats. I'm not sure. But the AI, will recover in no time flat and come at me. So let's just post up in these trees on the other end of a swamp and shoot them that way. That's basically the thought process. So we do that. And we start trying to harry around the edges of the Union position, because as much as I just said a second ago, like, oh, I know there's going to be reinforcements that spawn in, what I would like to do, the dream, would be to meet them with a division line on the northwestern edge of this diamond of woods, and then invite them to come either cross the creek or attack dug-in Confederate infantry in dense terrain over open ground, so that their options are basically lose or lose. And we're able to enter the position, but I don't know if we're able to word I'm looking for. What's the word I'm looking for here? We're able to get there, but we're not able to, I guess, reinforce the position enough that I feel like it's secure. Yeah, whatever. We have a pretty healthy amount of troops pushing the Union out of the diamond of trees, but we're not able to secure this clump of woods to the north where my cav is trying to move. We're not able to make good on that foothold because there's something down there, and it turns out it's infantry and an artillery unit, as well as the fact that the ironclads are providing nice supporting fires. We're not able to get a significant force in that northern block of trees and establish any kind of really convincing foothold for a while. We do eventually, obviously, but it takes a minute. So in the interim here, we're shooting the Confederates out, shooting the Union out of the trees here, pushing them into the open, providing a lot of incentive at the end of a musket for them to back up, because I want to have my troops posted ready for the wave of reinforcements that comes in. I want to be shelling them. I want to be, shattering them, pushing them out, especially these 2 big units of artillery. I want to get them out of those trenches too, because they're reaping quite the toll at this point. But I still don't want to trip that flag because we've got 2 hours left. So here's finally the Union attack from the north. So it's some pretty beefy brigades, cav and artillery support. So it's a well-rounded division. So we meet them. We've got troops in the woods. We've got troops across the river. We've got dismounted dragoons and artillery and everything else to kind of prevent this attack of theirs from getting off the ground. Additionally, we're trying to push forward, mostly to engage their artillery from whatever direction I can, ideally the south. Again, I just want to get them routed out of the trenches. That's it. That's the beginning and the end of my objective, is to not get any closer to the flag, hold that spot of terrain that I've got. But the issue is that the AI, I think very intelligently, continues to press around to the north, theoretically in an effort to outflank my position, but in effect, in an effort, it has that effect, whether or not that was the intent. Is they outflank my position and they continue to be a thorn in my side for the purposes of getting anything at all in this block of woods to the north. I need to deal with the attackers first. The attackers here, Hayes and these guys, you had Johnson, Washburn, so forth and so on. Up north, I need to deal with them first before I am able to allocate a significant portion of troops to the trees in the north. And then once I have that, I'll have successfully bisected, or not established my position at that juncture, and I'll feel pretty good about, the Confederate position and everything else. So they don't really have anywhere good to retreat, they being the Union. And this is another instance where once things start to turn for me, I start thinking about, well, how do I, deal with these guys quickly? Because I'm, again, in this position where I feel that I'm feeling the pressure. There's too many Union troops. They're able to transition back into the offensive, and I need some of these troops to push them to establish that command up north and kick them out of the woods there and start getting some side fires or something on their cannon and their infantry units and everything else. And I just keep on not being able to get something up there. And now I'm trying to back off from the flag. I'm going to take the flag back and everything else. And they do that. But I need to not be outflanked. And so, I'm like, okay, well, there's 6,000 infantry, and the rate at which muskets kill anything in this game, it's going to take an age for that to accomplish, for that to happen. So what can I do to speed it up? And eventually the answer becomes charge, which is a mistake. And you'll see why. It just drags and drags and drags and drags. And again, when your units are exhausted, they're no better than routing troops. And so you're not getting any kind of efficient killing done. But their units are ineffective because they're morale shocked almost immediately. Now, I'm watching this in reverse, and I realize I had plenty of infantry who was forming the second wave, who could have reallocated themselves around the Confederate rear and could have dislodged the two units, the two infantry brigades and the cav that are up there, and gotten some side fires on the artillery unit that's a thorn in my side, and all that stuff. I'm watching this in after the fact, and I'm seeing a bunch of things I could have caught or done differently or whatever. But you live and you learn. Yeah, I had troops that I could have allocated to that mission, but it's fine. We take the landing again, so what do I have to do? I have to back up once again. I'm just really trying not to take that flag too early. I don't want to have it. I don't want them to have the flag until the last possible moment. We get one cavalry charge in here, and this is further examples of what I think my lessons should be, and I finally realize I have infantry I can be moving. Limited charges. Limited mission charges with a very specific goal, one particular unit you're trying to scalpel out. In those instances, I think a melee charge is the right answer. I think a general, charge across the line or whatever is probably going to end up biting you in the butt and being worse than just shooting it out. But I'm impatient. And so I launch my assault. And it's initially very effective. It's initially incredibly effective. But the problem is that once your troops become exhausted or worn down or whatever, the AI, it doesn't retreat. Like it doesn't, sorry, it retreats. It doesn't shatter or rout or, surrender. Like if they did any of those things, this would be a very effective trick, but they don't. They just keep running and you get exhausted, and then very quickly no one's killing anybody. And it starts to cost you far more than you're getting out of it. So, there's some serious lessons learned here about, what is and is not going to work, what's effective, what's not effective, so forth and so on. We just take it all with a grain of salt. Yeah, I lost some stuff. So in here, 3rd Cavalry ends up shattering. Not because of, they're in melee, and they just slowly trickle to the point where they take enough casualties that they call it a day and they break. And this quagmire in the river ultimately costs me dearly in terms of just like worn down casualties. I'm pretty sure I lose an officer or two because the combat goes on long enough. I get 1st, 2nd, and 3rd rifles in there. They start pouring fire at close range. 1st, 3rd, and 4th rifles in there. They start pouring fire at close range, hoping to end this swirl of melee faster. And it doesn't have the desired effect. It doesn't, no units. One unit shatters on the initial volley, but the other 2 stick it out for a long time. And this costs me units. And so instead of learning the lesson, what do? Double down. I charge 3 exhausted rifle units in there, hoping that weight of numbers will cause these Union brigades to realize they're outnumbered and then just give it, surrender. Realistically, they should surrender. In any situation in the real world, these units would surrender. But it's a game. Sometimes things don't work out the way that they, might in the real world. So you learn the rules of the game. I pull 1st Cavalry out of there. I end up pulling 4th Light Infantry out of there. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from Shiloh, and I do. As I'm probably going to try and record 1st Winchester today, the audio for it. We'll see. So 1st Winchester I play. It's almost like you're watching 2 different generals. Is when you see 1st Winchester get off the ground, it's seriously like you're watching 2 different generals between Shiloh and Winchester. Now, admittedly, I'd had some time to kind of think about. I played Shiloh and then I recorded the audio for Bull Run, and I was gonna record the audio for some Stay Alert and Ambush Convoy and everything else, and I had time to think and to kind of let some of the lessons of this battle sink in, and it's a very different manner of play. It's a very different way that I fight the army in 1st Winchester than the way that you see the army fight here. We take our lessons. We learn a lot in these battles, and we just keep on keeping on, man. You're learning a new game. You've got to figure out that some of the things that did or did not work in the vanilla will or won't work differently than how you might expect them to here. And so, yeah. Now I'm feeling the pinch, right? Like, this combat isn't over. My guys are exhausted. I can't get them out of there. So now I take the flag. I take the flag because I want that countdown timer to run down. There's not a whole lot of Union left on the field. There's a couple of brigades here and there. There's an artillery and a cavalry. I don't really care. I'd rather just wipe out whatever's here and get it out of there than worry over much about, I want to kill everything. Just preserve your units, man. Constant preservation of force and efficient utilization of resources. This, religiously hunting down the fact that you can take out the entire army isn't the right answer. And look what happens. I get units out of the combat, and we start shooting at them more. And of course, almost immediately, one other one shatters. And we get... excuse me, wrong pipe. We get more units shooting at them, and then they call it a day, or they soon do. There's a lot that I could learn, and did, hopefully, from this battle. And the big one is melee works, but you've got to be really careful with it, basically. Otherwise, though, yeah, everything went pretty well. We're wrapping up in terms of the post commentary, so we're going to transition to day of here pretty soon, and in about, I guess, 6 in-game minutes, right? Yeah, I'm excited for where the rest of this campaign goes. I'm having a lot of fun, and I will see you guys in the next video. It's Fiasco signing out for right now. Okay, and we're back with day of commentary. Holy crap, that was brutal. This is pretty high. That's pretty high for Shiloh, I think, although I don't know how much of that's mine and how much of that's theirs. Definitely that melee endeavor towards the end of the battle was 100% a mistake. But we'll see. I genuinely don't know who's me and who's not, so whatever. Things happened. Folks got promoted, folks got killed. We'll figure it out in the next screen. This is the part that I can keep. A bunch of Napoleons is nice, a shitload of carbines, a metric crab load of 12-pound howitzers. Ooh, let's take a look at the 14-pound James. Decent range, decent accuracy. Cool, excellent, great. More 10-pound Parrots, that's always a good time. Yeah, some of this stuff is definitely going to go straight into units, that's good. A whole shitload of 1841s captured. The Cookin' Brother did okay. Where's... I don't remember which unit it had. It was 3 Dragoons, right? So, Confederate Cavalry, or no. Oh... Does it class them as skirmishers? Yes, it does. Okay. So 3rd Dragoons did okay. Not great, but okay. So we'll bump those units up. The Lorenzas were in that nice little skirmisher unit. They did pretty well. Cool. Awesome. Bunch of things rescued and captured. Man, I don't know. I don't know about this battle. I don't know if this was the right way to play it. Trying to trap units into corners like that and wipe out whole segments, and then cutting it off at day 1. I did not... Given the status of my army, I think, given how much we were burning through the supplies and everything, I don't think that pushing it to day 2 would have been the correct call. But we did destroy a significant portion of their army. We didn't get much of the cavalry, but we got most of the artillery, it looks like. No, we didn't. Never mind. Yeah, okay, and then some guys captured. So, yeah, I mean, that's Shiloh. I think Shiloh is one of the kind of the break points in terms of difficulty for the Confederate campaign. So, we'll see. We get Forrest, we get some career points, we get some rep, money, dudes. Albert Sidney Johnson, we gain a core slot, which is always great. And then, a bad rate of exchange on prisoners for recruits, but it is what it is. We did lose a light infantry unit, again, in that big mess of a melee, which was, again, absolutely a mistake. I'm also, at this point, thoroughly convinced that melee is also a mistake, just generally, in terms of perking your points. Let me see, what do I need to be at the end of this? Gaines Mills, probably, you need to have 2 core to fight, yeah. So you need to leave at least 2 fighting corps. So again, we're growing the army, which is a shame. But I probably have enough perks at this point in AO, and so I need to start thinking about putting those perks into, what's the next one get me? 3 corps. So it gets me another corps, which is certainly useful to have more than 2 in that fight, but we'll see if I'm up to the challenge of building beyond a second combat corps. And to that end, I think we need 2 points in logistics just to... shit. Well, this won't show up until the end of the next battle, right? Logistics in stop multiplier. Yeah, because I think this can only... the shop only refreshes at the end of each... oh, well, it is fine. It's fine. Whatever. It'll be useful at some juncture. Just a crap load of wounded officers and then a bunch of guys who are back off the bench. New crop of majors and captains. And then we've got some weapons to take a look at, too. So the army's a mess. A whole bunch of things got their star. And sorry, dude. I know that's ridiculous, but okay. I'll figure out their gun situation later. I'm just firm in the camp of the gun perk is where it's at. Okay, so I'll clean everything up. I guess I kind of want to give him Corps Command, maybe. Yeah, I suppose. And did anybody else make General? Not yet. Although Archer might in the course of the battles to come. Where's Forrest? Forrest. How'd they perk him in the mod? So he's got sawed off. We're going to get rid of those in a heartbeat. Did we lose the Dragoon unit too? I guess we did. Wait. No, they had 100 left. We lost 4th Light Infantry. Nope, there they are. Well, I guess it was the Dragoon unit. I guess it was the Dragoon unit with the Cookin brother. Archer for Division Command. All right, so you're perked at speed and rotation speed. Okay, so you're mobile. That's cool. Melee damage, morale received, fire damage, charge damage, speed. And then weird. Speed. Melee. Although the icon makes me think this is a recon perk, but the actual stats, charge damage, speed, morale received, reductions, strike me as optimized for melee. So this might be a weird situation where I have a suspicion that looking at some of these things, I have a suspicion that they wanted a perk to go in one place, and then it, in terms of the icon that goes for the perk, it went somewhere else. That's just a guess. Don't quote me on that, but that's my theory. And then this one is effective range, reload time, accuracy, and cover. So just a general purpose cav unit. Interesting. I think the sawed off is a mistake with them. I could see Cookin Brothers actually being good for them. Cookin Brothers seems like it's actually kind of an okay. What's this? Short rifle is exceptionally accurate but slow to reload. Kind of an updated Cookin Brother, maybe. Range 300. Pretty good damage curve. It's accurate. Where's the Cookin Brother? Huh. I don't know. Whatever. We'll figure it out. I've got those to spare, so I might do that with them. These guys all get perks. At this point, I'm pretty comfortable sticking with that. I don't know. I've got to figure out what I want to do with all of the light infantry units in terms of, do I want to turn them into snipers or scouts or what? We'll figure all that out in the next video, but we have everything leading up to Gaines Mill left to go. Their armory creeped up 5%. Their training, I think, remained nearly the same, but they gained, I don't know, like 10,000 guys or something. So yeah, we will be back in the next video. And until then, I thought that was incredibly rough. That was a difficult fight, especially the stuff around the Muleshoe, or not the Muleshoe, the Hornet's Nest. So yeah, had fun though. Just I'm still kind of just getting used to how slow everything is. It's very minus 15% weapons quality. Woof. You defeated the enemy at the Battle of Shiloh. Federal armies send new weapons to the Western Theater. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, because the Battle of Shiloh's over here somewhere. Okay, cool. Well, I'll see you guys in the next one. And until then, this is Fiasco signing out.